Hello and welcome back to Israel with Aline. We are today in Megiddo, this city that is also known as Armageddon, a place that has the past, the present, and the future of Israel. And Armageddon is surrounded by the beautiful Jezreel Valley. But in this beautiful place, some of the greatest battles of Israel happened. And where, according to the book of Revelation, will the final battle take place? And we are going to get to know this place in depth today and learn about its archaeological excavations from the Canaanite period. So if you are ready, let's get started. The city of Megiddo is one of the most important in the ancient world. It appears in Canaanite texts, in Aramaic texts, in Egyptian texts. It appears both in the Old and in the New Testament. Now, why Megiddo was on the largest trade route in the ancient world? Because Megiddo was on the largest trade route in the ancient world, the Via Maris, the way of the sea, which linked from ancient Egypt to Mesopotamia, from Africa to Asia and to Europe. So whoever controlled Megiddo controlled the Via Maris and controlled the trade of a good part of the ancient world. And since everyone wanted to control Megiddo and have its riches, the city will see so many battles, it will be destroyed and rebuilt 26 times. And it will be rebuilt one on top of the other and will create this artificial mountain. In reality, 6,000 years of destructions and reconstructions of Megiddo. The name of the city in Hebrew is Megiddo, or that, when written in Greek, they write Armageddon, that when written in Greek, they write Armageddon as Armageddon. So the two words are synonyms. But let's go here now to the balcony and see the location of this place. In addition to us talking about an important commercial location in the ancient world, look at the biblical significance this place has. Over there in the background, those mountains are the mountains of Nazareth. That very round hill we're seeing is Mount Tabor, where there are stories from the old, and you see the beautiful Jezreel Valley. And on the other side, we can see the beginning of another mountain, which is Mount Carmel. That's the mountain where the prophet Elijah lived and worked. And all of this in this small geographical space. We are now walking inside a colossal gate. This gate was built by King Solomon himself. How do we know this? Well, because of archaeology, the way it was built, but also what is written in the Bible itself, in the book of Kings 9:15. And this is the cause of the tribute that imposed his house, and Milo and the wall of Jerusalem as his house, and Milo and the wall of Jerusalem as a little more than 3,000 years. It has a technique a little more than 3,000 years old. It has a very interesting ancient construction technique, which are these pieces of wood. This wood, of course, is not 3,000 years old. It was placed here during the restorations. But why would anyone in the ancient world intersperse some pieces of wood with piles of stones? Because the region of Israel is the meeting of tectonic plates. And that's why earthquakes can happen. We have historical records of earthquakes that shook the land of Israel. So the idea of the wood was to serve as a buffer between all these stones. And they are now working on the restoration of this part of King Solomon's temple gates. Let's now get to know another construction made by King Solomon's temples. Let's now get to know another construction made by a king. In this case, by King Jeroboam II, who reigned over Israel 2,800 years ago. And he is going to build this silo here, this gigantic grain depot. It is 36 feet wide and 23 feet deep. And here tons and tons of grain could be stored. In case the city was besieged, they would need enough food to keep the city fed. This statue of a carriage already shows us where we are going to arrive. We are now going to see gigantic stables. They had a lot in total for that time. And why did they need so much for that time? And why did they need so many horses? Because horses were also used by soldiers. And this shows us that there was a large cavalry battalion here. But when were these stables built? Were they built during the time of the first temple of Jerusalem? But there is a debate among the archaeologists themselves whether these stables are from the time of King Solomon or King Ahab. One way or another, they are between 2,800 and 3,000 years old. My favorite part here of these stables are the mangers. Here we are seeing some that are reconstructed. The manger is this space where food is placed for the animals. And here on the side we can see original mangers. They are centuries before the birth of Jesus. Here in front we are going to see one of the most impressive and oldest structures of Armageddon from the time of the Canaanite period. And we see behind from the time of the Canaanite period. And we see here below this circular construction, it is the altar where sacrifices were made. And around it was also found a huge amount of bones from these animals that were sacrificed. Well, I brought here water in a plastic bottle today, but how did the people of Megiddo have water 3,000 years ago? For them to have water inside the city, they built one of the most complex water systems in the ancient world. When they found this here, which we're going to see in a second, the archaeologists were perplexed. So we are literally now going to enter the underground of the city of Megiddo and discover how they had water at that time. Let's go. From up here we can see a giant hole which is the entrance to this water system. Let's start going down, and while we do that we'll understand how this water system works. Do 15, come on, do it. I loved it. The guy said you have to be in good shape to climb all this. And it's true, and that the place is very beautiful. But let's start to understand what this is. The people of Megiddo knew they had an underground water source, but it was outside the walls. They didn't want the water to be outside because if the city was besieged, the water would be available to the enemies and not to them. And besides, going outside the walls to fetch water every day and coming back was extremely tiring. So, what do they decide to do? They're going to dig a giant tunnel that goes down the mountain and then it goes to the water source, giving access to those inside the city and then blocking the exit to the other side so that those outside the walls couldn't see this spring. And now, folks, we're really going to start the descent. What we've done so far was just the beginning. We're going to go down and find where the spring is that we're going to descend now has 118 feet of depth. That we're going to descend now has 118 feet of depth. Here we can already see the beginning of the tunnel that goes to the spring. Let's head there. But Armageddon is not only about ancient history. Above here is the modern city of Armageddon, which is a kibbutz. It's a mini Jewish community that is less than a kibbutz. is a mini Jewish community that has less than 1,000 people. But it means that even today people live here in Armageddon. This is one of the reasons why I like Israel so much. About 3,000 years ago, the source about 3,000 years ago, the water source, the source of life in the city of Armageddon. Nowadays, the water system no longer works, but here pass dozens, in high season, sometimes hundreds or thousands of people a day to learn about the history, people who come from all over the world. Just like Israel is today. Israel is a mix of people who come from all over the world, Christians, Jews, Muslims, and so many other people who pass through here. But also, we can't be in Armageddon and not talk about the book of Revelation. Revelation 16:16 more specifically. And so many people come here to look at the past, but also to see what will happen in the future, both here in Megiddo and in the valley around us. So, as you can see, folks, I'm super tired from this walk, but I want to get out of these tunnels and go back and finish our tour in the valley of Armageddon, the site of the great battle. So let's go. And a little bit of the great battle. So let's go. And a little bit of water. We still have some here in the fountain. But of course, the fountain itself, how big it was in biblical times. It no longer exists. But let's go now, folks. Make our ascent to the light at the end of the tunnel. Here, archaeological. And this reminds us how much is still left to be archaeological. And this reminds us how much is still left to be excavated. Most of Megiddo has not yet been excavated. 2,600, maybe 3,600 years ago. Who knows how 2,600, maybe 3,600 years ago, who knows how long they are. And that's why a lot is still going to be revealed here. And here in front of the Valley of Armageddon, we end today's tour, combining the past, the present, and the future. I hope you enjoyed it. More videos here in Galilee will come in the next few days. There are videos on the channel every Wednesday and Sunday. A big kiss and see you next time.